Coming up on Stonation. So the big question that I have is that you bought a facility out there over by Denver. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? As you probably already know, Agile is coming out with their locker with ARB. So the question is, what's the difference between your air locker and what Agile is coming out with? With the stock wheels and tires that, the classic Stealth and Beast come with, do you have to upgrade to a 35-inch tire, or can you use it all stock with that locker? Someone who doesn't want the locker, but they just want their gears redone, can you just do that? Or do you have to get the locker too? So we talked about the Ultimate Beast, and the big moving pieces obviously are the tires, the diff, but what else did you do to that bad boy? Welcome to another episode of Stonation, a production of Park Media. Before I introduce today's guest, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share, and leave a 5-star review. And if you find this podcast useful in any way and want to pay us the ultimate compliment, head on over to our Patreon page where you can subscribe to be a Classic, Stealth, or Beast Mode subscriber. What's going on, Stonation? Welcome back to another episode. On this episode, I got to sit down with John Willenborg for a second time, but this time we were able to talk extensively about what has happened with this shop as a whole since the last time we talked, which was almost a year ago. If you haven't listened to the first episode with John, make sure you check it out. It's episode number 7, because we go more into detail about his background and how Owl Vans began. So believe it or not, this episode is actually the longest episode that I've recorded so far. So long that the battery actually died while we were recording. So to make this conversation more digestible, I've broken it down into part 1 and part 2. Part 2 will be released next week. So for the first part, we go into detail about his new facility in Denver, Colorado. John talks about his plans for customers to be able to stop in, stay the night, and have some accommodations in line for the traveling persons. He also talks about his plans to build a really cool off-road track. Additionally, we go into a deep dive into his new air locker and how it's going to take vans where they've never been before. We also talk about what it took to make it, how it's made, how it compares to Agile's ARB locker, the price, and when it'll hit the market. John also reveals some behind-the-scenes issues that he's had to deal with while running Owl Vans, because let's face it, running a business like this cannot be easy. And finally, we talk about what went into all his features that make his storyteller the ultimate beast. Again, don't forget that part 2 will be released next week, where John shares his thoughts on the new Storyteller's Invader system, answers listeners' questions, and much, much more. So please sit back, relax, and welcome John Willenborg back to the Stonation family. John, welcome to Stonation.
Oh, thanks so much for having me back. At least I didn't do so badly the first time that it was one and done, so I'll take that as a win.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of weird because you are the second person, as far as like a solo interview goes, you're the second person to be on Stonation for the second time.
I'm honored. I'm honored. Let's go be the first person to be on 3 times, and then all your listeners will revolt.
No, they won't revolt. It's interesting because Stonation is, I don't know. We've been in full swings since March, I think. So it's been almost an entire year because we're recording this almost mid-January. And I know when we oh God, my R's. I'm Asian. I can't help it. It's my clutch or my see. I can't even say my. It's my crutch. But anyways, when we recorded, it was before March online, but now I'm in your office, and a lot has happened in the last year, like crazy amounts. So,
yeah, it's been a crazy year, crazier in the van industry in all respects, and I never know what to expect with this industry. I mean, from the growth, the demand, the products, the innovations, it's all over the map. And it's funny because this time of year, as we go into the next year, for us as a company, it's kind of our planning session, and we look at, what are we going to do in 2022 and what's that going to look like? And so it gives us a chance to look back on 2021 and what were our goals and what did we want to accomplish and how did we do? And it's pretty crazy because as a business, you have to plan. But this industry is so insane that it's really hard to wrap kind of reason and rationality around it. So, yeah, the past year's been crazy, but everyone's seen that. I mean, look, used vans are selling for over what brand new vans were 6 months ago. And I don't think that's sustainable, but it certainly shows that the industry is super hot and people love it.
Yeah. I mean, just going out to like anywhere in BLM or national parks or something like that, it's always jam-packed full of stuff, which is cool. But also for like the people that actually did it before the pandemic, it kind of makes it a little bit rough just because of the, how crowded. But I mean, it's still fun. Still fun getting out there. But yeah, I remember you said that you had some stuff up your sleeve a year ago, and you sure delivered on that promise. So I guess so the big question that I have is that I don't know if you bought or built a facility out there over by Denver, but I heard it's really huge. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. We have a number of facilities now. We have the one you're sitting in now, which is our headquarters here in Marin, California. And then just north, we have an install facility, which apparently you Googled and went to first thing this morning. So I'm glad you ended up down here at the right place. And then we have an install facility in Southern California, and then Denver, actually, Arvada or Arvada. I apologize for all you Coloradians.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Who know how to actually pronounce that. We call it Arvada, but it's just kind of right there. It's actually right down the street from Touareg. And Slee, for all you off-road people, Land Cruiser people, Paul Pritz will know who Slee is. And Flare Space actually is right there as well. So kind of a cool little triangle of companies. But with Owl, the cool thing is we aren't a bunch of accountant bean counters. And so when we go to open a new facility, we don't have to sit there and go like, oh, how many, what's the turn going to be? How many customers can we get in and out in a week? And what's the this and then that? It's really, we get to do stuff that we think is cool. And so maybe this will end up being not a wise decision, but what we wanted to do with our Denver location is create something really cool for the van community. So it's not purely about, hey, how many installs can we do here? It's about, hey, how can we create something really, really cool where even someone who's not using Owl stuff or not going to get stuff installed can go and have a cool place to hang out. And you talked about all the BLM lands and different parks and so on being so crowded. And a lot of companies, like I think Ford now, has a bunch of land and a bunch of private off-road areas for Bronco owners. And I thought that was really cool. And so our place in Arvada, what we've done is it's an old explosives manufacturer, which is
really?
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that actually worked out really well because what it is it's an industrial building that is in this beautiful valley, but it's not surrounded by anything. And because you can't, manufacture dynamite and have like a school next door. So it's this cool building, and it's on 76 acres of
Holy cow.
of like rolling hills, and there's a stream that goes through it.
Wow.
And so we were like, this is absolutely perfect. And so when we talked to the landlord, it's a little bit bigger building than we wanted, but we said, look, we'll rent this. But you got to include all the land. You got to put a 4-wheel course on it that we can test vehicles and show the locker and teach recovery courses. And we got to have parking lots so that van people, Owl customers or not, who are driving through can park and stay the night there safely. And so we wanted to create something just that was a cool place for van people to come and hang out, talk about their vans, van parts, and we can host shows there. We talked to Neil at Adventure Van Expo and Mike Reed with Revel Rally, and I know it's a Stone Nation podcast, but we're all friends. We don't have to pick teams at this point. But we've talked to a lot of those folks, and we'd love to do stuff with you and Stone Nation and these kinds of things, and make it an area where, like I said, folks can come and hang out and do van stuff and not worry about having a ton of Jeeps, although we love Jeep people too. Pointing fingers and being like, get your van off our trails.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask the essentials. Is there showers? Will there be showers?
That is a good question. There are not showers now that I know of. I know we're doing some improvements to that building, so it's certainly something that I know was discussed, but it's going to kind of happen over time. So it's winter right now in Colorado. We just moved in not long ago. It has been, I know people are getting pandemic fatigue, but to talk about running a business during these times, and I understand it, I hear it every day with customers being frustrated, and with supply chain issues and these kinds of things, but labor is just a massive problem. And I don't want to derail fun van podcasts with labor discussions, but just getting people to work. We actually flew some of our techs here from Northern California. We flew them out for a few weeks and put them up in hotels in Colorado because we can't hire anyone. And so we have such a backlog there that we're actually flying folks out and housing them to work on customer vehicles in Colorado, and then we'll bring them back because we literally can't hire people. And
why is that?
I have no idea. I think if someone solves that, they'll be an incredibly important and wealthy person. I mean, we're seeing absolute insanity. I mean, we pay really, really well, and we're in Northern California, and we care a lot about our team. And so, saving nickels and dimes here and there on the staff we pay is not who we are as a company. But you also it has to pencil, right? So we've got not even techs, but assistant techs that are coming in demanding, 6+ figure salaries to tighten bolts all day. And and that's great if they can get it. But the fact of the matter is, it has to pencil out, and you can't have a staff of 5 people, that are doing X amount of work for X amount of dollars and have costs be that high. So it's a really uncomfortable place for businesses, and I don't know how it's going to shake out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you did pay assistant tech 6 figures, that has, second, third order effects, and these ripples are going to be having to, basically the end user, which is a customer, is going to have to end up paying it. And then
someone pays somewhere. And unfortunately, if it doesn't pencil, and there's a cascade effect too, which is if you've got someone there already who manages all those people, and then you have one tech that comes in and now you have to justifiably raise everyone's rates as well, which we want to be really, really competitive, but it's just tough I'm trying our best to not pass on price increases to the customer, but it's really hard because I get it as a customer, and I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about pricing, but as a customer, it's really easy to sit there and go, hey, why is this so expensive? And if you pull back the curtain and show them the costs, I think people would be surprised at the van industry. And I think people have something in their mind about how much margin companies make on things. And I think in this day and age with inflation and labor prices, they actually make a lot less than people think they do on certain parts. And so managing that dynamic and making sure that we are offering a value to our customer and making sure that we can raise rates, or not rates, but raise prices and push that out as far as possible. That's what we're doing right now, but it gets tough. Yeah,
that's crazy. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now. Good luck with that.
Oh, there are worse shoes to be in. We, at the end of the day, we have fun and we've got a good, healthy business here, but it's certainly something that affects the van industry. And people are fighting over the same parts, the same chassis, the same labor, and it's tough when you have this kind of demand and it's not a really well built out industry yet.
Yeah. No, I totally understand what you're saying. To go back to the original question, so, I mean, I know it's just your facility is just, starting, but ultimately, maybe showers. What about laundry, washer dryers?
That's something we've definitely considered because those are the key features, right? Clean the person, clean the gear.
Yeah.
And so that is something that we definitely want to add. Right now, we got to get staff. And so once we get staff there that can actually service people's vehicles in the manner in which we promised to, then the next step would be things like having facilities and showers and those kinds of things and places for people to park. And we still have to get a bulldozer and go build all the trails because while there are some trails there, we need to put obstacles in and make it even more fun. So that's all going to happen, but we're going to wait for summer.
What are you planning for that obstacle course? Like,
all different kinds of things. I think one of the aspects, and I love the last podcast. I'm not sure when these come out specifically in time, but it was the Van Compass podcast with Mark and Rob from Van Compass, who I love. And they talk about things like, suspension and the flex and how much down travel you have and how much up travel you have and these kinds of things. And I think a lot of people coming to the van world aren't necessarily coming from a Jeep like yourself. They're typically coming from maybe an SUV and an adventurous spirit. They're a mountain biker who loves to travel and they're like, vans are going to be awesome. But they don't have that background in four-wheeling and off-roading. And so what is, how does the suspension work? And why is it important to get down travel on a suspension? And, the answer is because a tire that's not on the ground can't do anything for you. And so having a tire that can drop and hit the ground and actually be useful is important.
Yeah.
And so with our course, we can do things like have obstacles that are, I'm sure there's a term for this in off-roading, but I actually don't know off the top of my head, but where you have kind of like speed bumps, but they're mismatched. So it's like every other one. And it really shows and highlights how well a vehicle flexes. And so driving over those things and being able to keep wheels on the ground is important. And so what we can do is we can set that up. A customer can drive over it with a stock suspension. We can put on some Van Compass sway bar release, quick releases. Pop the sway bars. Hey, there's a couple of extra inches of travel you didn't know. Then we can put on, a suspension, and they can see how it flexes and articulates and allows them to keep contact with the ground. So these types of things. We've got a brand new locker, which we just rode around before the show in our Ultimate Beast build with the new Alvan's locking differential. That's a cool product. A lot of people don't understand why a locking differential is such a critical piece of off-road gear. And so we'll be able to demonstrate that and be able to go into kind of the how and why you'd have a locker, when you'd use it. And also teaching people, once you have these tools, it can really help you, but it can also cause other cascade effects. Once you have a locking differential, you have to understand how to use it, because coming from the Jeep world, you guys know that when someone goes out on a trail, they're going to carry things like spare axle shafts and these kinds of things. Now, a Mercedes does not have the torque and pressure to snap axles for the most part. But when you make them more capable and start locking differentials, it allows you to go places and do things that are way cooler than what we can do now. But it also puts more stress on those components. And if you don't know how to use them, things like using a locking differential on the street is a terrible idea. Because the reason limited slip differentials and open differentials exist, and there's an amazing video. I implore everyone that hears this to go watch this video online. It's like from the 1920s or 30s. It's one of those old school videos like you used to see about the Cold War and stuff. But it's all about differentials and why differentials are so important, and how like the original cars used to drive a single wheel. And then somebody decided, well, hey, what if we drive both? Well, if we drive both wheels, a car can't go around a corner because the inside wheel, it's just like a track in the Olympics, right? When you watch a running race, you notice on the races that aren't like the marathon, they stagger the start. So the person in the outside lane is way up in front of the person on the inside lane. Well, that's because when you take the corner, the person on the inside lane is traveling a shorter distance. And so the person on the outside lane has to travel a further distance. So they spot them 50 yards or meters or whatever it is.
Right.
It's the same thing is absolutely true of your rear tires. So as you make a turn, the inside tire has to turn more slowly because it's covering less distance than the outside tire. It's traveling much more quickly. And so an open differential, that's fine. That's no problem. That sucks off-roading. It's great for the street, but it sucks off-roading. And so once you lock your differential, both wheels turn at the same rate. It's essentially having like a straight through axle. So you can't really corner. The only thing that has to give is traction. So if you try to corner in some people that have had, four-wheel drive trucks with lockers and so on, you try to go around a corner four-wheel drive locked, and it's like chirp, 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 because the tire's actually slipping. It's like slipping and popping on the pavement. In fact, I have an 80 series Land Cruiser, and if you triple lock that thing and you're not on dirt, you almost can't do anything. Like the thing is, if you're in a parking lot and you can't turn the steering wheel, you can go forward and back, and it doesn't even really like that if you're not on dirt. And so lockers are incredibly critical, important off-road gear, but you have to know how to use them, when to use them, these kinds of things.
So, as you probably already know, Agile is coming out with their locker with ARB. So the question is, what's the difference between your air locker and what Agile is coming out with?
Well, the great thing, as much as I dislike other folks coming out with competitive products, is that in the end, the customer wins, right? So the cool thing is, as you have more companies bring out these things, it's going to drive everyone, including the folks at Owl, to work even harder to make sure it's the best possible product. And we do that anyway, but everybody's competitive. And when there are other options out there, you got to work even harder. So we knew that ARB had something in the works. ARB, it's a huge company. It's an Australian company. They do a lot of Jeep stuff. And we knew they had been sniffing around this market. But, and this is going to be a self-serving comment, but I'm biased. We don't believe in just finding a solution at Owl. We believe in finding the best solution. And if there isn't the best solution, then we'll make it ourselves. And we've done that a lot with different products. And so we had seen the ARB solution, and we thought about waiting on it with an uncertain timeline and then kind of being unknown as to what we'd end up with at the end. And we also knew that the Mercedes is a different scenario than a Jeep. A Jeep is much more tolerant of parts that don't fit properly. And the joke I always use is anyone that's old enough to remember Back to the Future, where they had the, I think it was like Back to the Future 2 or something, where they had like a disposal on top and they're dumping in like coffee grinds and a shoe and all this stuff to power the engine or the time travel machine. That's kind of how a Jeep is. You know, you can throw things at a Jeep or a Land Cruiser and it just takes it. Mercedes are not that way. I mean, we have to have machines in-house at all our install locations to machine shims to hit the tolerances for these lockers. It's just a different level of complexity and precision that German engineers demand over, you know, stuff that was designed for the military. And they designed it for the military for a reason, because dirt can get in your differential, and that's fine. That's not true of a Sprinter. So getting back to kind of your original question, we worked really hard, and we have an absolutely fantastic engineer that worked on this diff. And it's something where I still step back and I'm blown away as someone who cannot design and engineer a locking differential myself. To see the complexity of what we as a company have been able to build blows me away, and I'm so proud of it. So that's kind of A, it's just like a proud papa. But B, we're able to incorporate all the things that we want to for this. And the differences that are meaningful to a customer, ARBs have anyone that goes online and looks up ARBs, and I'm not getting on this to try to bash ARBs. I'm just talking about what we worked on as a company to make sure that we had the best possible product. The failure point for ARBs and a lot of air lockers are the seals. So you get these seals that have to hold the air pressure, and they don't get used a lot. And so if you're not using your seals a lot, and then all of a sudden you flip them on, and an air compressor is going to put out 100, 120 psi, you can blow a seal. And you blow a seal, and now your locker's not going to work. So first and foremost, we decided we had to go with oversized seals. So I think our seals are like double the size of what's in an ARB.
Are you talking about width or length or like diameter? Like
that is something I have to talk to the engineer again. So
okay.
That's, I believe that the width of our seal or the circumference is much, much bigger, but not being able to put them side by side, I will defer to our engineer, because like I said, I am regurgitating, it's not a really pleasant word, repeating the aspects that he felt were really necessary in making the best product, because I know how to use a locker, and I know what a locker is, and I know why they're so awesome. I do not know the specifics of why this seal would be better than that seal. That is certainly our engineering team's job, and they do a phenomenal job. But the other main thing, in addition to making the seal almost double the size, is that we downregulate the air pressure. So a standard ARB is running 100, 120 psi. We put a regulator, and we made our locker actuate on about 40 psi. Completely different ballgame. Anyone that's ridden a mountain bike with 40 psi in the tire versus a road bike with like 100, 120 knows how different that amount of air pressure is. And so the goal there is double the size of the seal, have or more than halve the amount of air pressure it takes to actuate the locker, and you've got something that's going to last drastically longer, especially in a occasional use environment like a van where it may sit for months at a time, and then you go on a trail and you want to lock the locker, you need it to work at that time. That was a big step forward for us. Our gears are bigger, and we have actual percentages. He can correct me, but it's like 30 or 40% more gear interface. And we're kind of splitting hairs here, but these are meaningful differences, right? So when you get to a vehicle that's 10,000 pounds, you're moving all of that 10,000 pounds through these small, tiny little gears in that differential. And so having a greater interface between those gears is going to mean that as you apply that torque, and in a high torque environment where the wheel actually grabs traction suddenly, you're going to have a bigger interface, which means it's going to be more robust.
So you change out the actual gears inside the diff then, right? You make them...
Yes. So the way, and again, I completely got off topic and sorry. Going back to, and maybe we can splice this in earlier with your editing wizardry. This video online, I can look up, and you can put it in the notes for the episode or whatever. It's like how a differential works. It's like from the 1930s, and it is so cool. They walk you through designs and diagrams with like toothpicks and these cool displays, and it explains entirely how a differential works. Watching that will help people understand what a locking differential is and why it's important. So to get back to your question right now, so we do all that in-house. We machine all of the gears, and then it comes in a nice little housing. In fact, I have a housing out there. And when you come into an Owl Off-Road location or any of our pro-level dealers that will be installing this, they're not dealing with any gears for the most part. Ring and pinion, yes, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The actual locking gears are all inside the case, and it just kind of, one comes out, one goes in a nice little bundle, and that all works. But you've got a bunch of little gears in there that interface when the locking ring goes in and out. But it's those gears. I would say the huge differentiator, and again, you got to drive our Ultimate Beast with the re-gear. So that van is on 35-inch tires. 35-inch tires are big tires. No one's been able to get 35-inch tires to work on these vehicles yet because of the adaptive cruise control. You also have to do a little bit of trimming to get them to fit. But the cool thing about those tires is they're one of, as you know, the Van Compass episode talked about, one of the only ways to gain ground clearance on a vehicle is with tire size. So you can do lifts and these kinds of things, but you're only raising certain parts. The lowest part of your vehicle is still going to be the rear differential. So by adding tire size, you're literally adding inches of clearance to that rear differential and your drive shaft and all these types of things, right? So being able to put larger tires on these vehicles is important. The best way to explain how tires affect your vehicle, they not only help ground clearance, but they completely change the gearing of your vehicle. So when the German engineers, again, precise, not throw stuff at a wall and see what works, they spec'd out a certain tire size that was going to be kind of on a Sprinter when it was designed as kind of a commercial delivery vehicle. That tire is small, high mileage road tire. If you buy a Mode or a Beast or a Stealth or even, a Revel, they're going to come with somewhat of an off-road tire already that's been oversized or plus sized from what it came on. So what happens is as you go bigger with that tire, you're essentially changing the gearing. So the engine speed is always going to be changing based on RPM. And then the speed at which your axles turn is really driven by how big your tires are. So what you're essentially doing is if anyone's that's ridden a bike uphill, like a mountain bike or even a road bike or something, and you get in that climbing gear for that super steep part of your ride where you've got to have, what we refer to as kind of a granny gear, right? Mm-hmm. So you're turning the pedals. You're not making much forward progress, but you can still turn the pedals. And if you then took that bike that was set up for riding a hill, and anyone that's ever kind of forgotten and they start going flat or going downhill and then they go to pedal and the pedals just kind of free spin, and no matter how fast you are, you could never pedal to gain any momentum. Or even a better analogy is come to a stop sign with that climbing gear and then try to pedal away from the stop sign. And what's going to happen is you're going to spin your legs really, really fast and the bike's not going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. So the same is true of an engine, essentially. Your legs are the engine. The engine turns, your legs turn the pedals. And so what re-gearing does is it puts the van in the proper gearing for the size tires that we have. So when we go to these oversized tires, the ring and pinion, which determines the final gear for the differential of the Mercedes, I think it's a 392 in the four-wheel drive to start. Here's, again, going down a rabbit hole, really weird. The front is a 435. The rear is a 392, and I'll explain why that's super odd. Typically, they match in almost every vehicle on the road because mm-hmm. otherwise the transfer case has problems. Anyway, on the Sprinter, the rear 392s are great if you have an Amazon van on 26-inch tires, but what happens, and everyone I'm sure has experienced this with a Sprinter van, is you're at a stop sign and you go to pull away and it's like nothing, wham, and you get hit mm-hmm. with this turbo lag that builds up. You build up RPMs, you build up boost in the turbo, and then it hits you all at once. And it's the stuff shaker. All your stuff goes from the front of the cabinet to the back. Sometimes stuff falls over, and it sucks. The drivability of it sucks. And there are tons of Band-Aids out there. We have a Rentec tune, pedal control. These are all things that we can do that help the situation. The fact of the matter is the van is not geared properly for the larger tires. And so by putting 435 gear set in the rear differential when we change out the locker, it allows us to fix that bicycle gearing, if you will. So you can pull away from that stop sign in a gear that's meant for that. And it does all kinds of things. It keeps your RPMs down so that when you're pulling away or when you're off-roading, you're in that right RPM band. You're not pushing the throttle down as hard to pull away from a stop sign. You're going to have a more accurate speedometer. It's going to be closer to what your actual speed is. And in fact, it's been alien to the Sprinter van world, but you talk to anybody who off-roads in a Jeep or a Land Cruiser or whatever, and re-gearing is like the norm, right? Because it's one of the first things you do. In fact, you were saying earlier that you used to have a Jeep, and you put it on 30, what was it, 35s?
35s, yeah.
Yeah, and you re-geared it.
Yeah.
And the reason that wasn't available to the Sprinter audience is that the ring and pinion were welded in. So Mercedes decided that they were going to weld the ring gear in because my guess is it's faster to manufacture. Making those ring and pinion gears is incredibly complex and incredibly expensive. I know firsthand. And there's not many people on earth that have the facilities that can do that. And most of the people that do have those facilities are major OEM suppliers. I think there's a few in Italy that are really huge. Mercedes is not turning and cutting their own ring and pinion gears. Those are being made by one of these major companies. So we reach out to those companies and they go, yeah, that's no problem. It's going to be, you'll get your order in 2 years and minimum order quantity is $6 million. And you're like, okay, so we're going to be making our own gears. So that started a only slightly less expensive project of making our own gears. And we knew it was the right thing to do. So you talk about a differentiator. With the ARB is just a locking differential. So you have your stock gearing, which is not correct. And so for us as a company, spending the time and a customer paying thousands of dollars to come in to get something they're clearly upgrading because they care about the performance of their vehicle, and then to half fix it just didn't feel right for us. And so we're like, you know what? It's going to cost us a massive amount of money to get this tooling and these presses to make these gears, but it's the right thing to do because this is the way the vehicle should be.
Right.
And so anyway, that's kind of the differentiator. So to sum up 20 minutes of rambling about our locker, we've got oversized seals to help in longevity. We've down-regulated the air pressure to help in longevity. We've oversized the gear interface so that it's stronger and you're going to have fewer problems. We have the best warranty, a better warranty than any other locker company out there.
What's your warranty?
I have to look online, but I think we're doing like 3 years unlimited mileage or 5 years unlimited mileage.
Unlimited mileage? Nice.
Yeah. And we're also controlling the installation. So I never want a situation where a customer gets into the finger pointy thing. And I know that happens already with like Storytellers and Mercedes. You have something break on the Mercedes side of things, you bring your van in and Mercedes goes, well, I can't fix this part because there's a galley in the way. And we didn't put the galley in, so you got to get the galley out. And then you go to, you're this dealer you bought the Storyteller from, and they go, well, our part didn't break, so why am I going to pay to pull out a galley when it's the Mercedes part that broke? They should pay. And so you end up in this, it always gets worked out for the most part, but you end up with this finger pointing situation where I can see both sides of it. I can see both companies' points, right? If we didn't create if we had a part that didn't break, why am I paying for anything, right? And so with our differentials, that's what we want to do. So we're controlling the install with our installation centers. It's one of the reasons we're building up that network, because when something goes wrong and you bring it in, we're not going to be like, oh, it's because the dealer installed it wrong. They didn't machine the shims properly, so it doesn't fit. Or that's not going to be a scenario. It's going to be installed by us with our parts. So if something goes wrong, we own it and we fix it. As opposed to buying parts that are made overseas, shipped in, and then you have some other person who maybe knows how to install Jeep lockers, but it is absolutely not the same deal with the Sprinter van. Install it, not shim it properly. You have a problem, and now what's going to happen? So that's what we want to avoid.
Nice. So how much field testing have you done with this bad boy?
A fair amount, but you run into some scenarios, and hopefully this is interesting to customers. So when you make those gears, you have to check how well they're working together. So our lockers had no problems. There are refinements that we're going to make on the test units, fitment. Right now we have to machine a little bit of the inside of the case. For speed of install, we want to get away from that, so we're trying to shrink the size slightly on one of the housings. And so little refinements like that. But where's I going with this? What's your question again?
Field testing?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that happens with the ring and pinions and the gears in these things, they get heat treated so that they're when you heat treat metal, it becomes much stronger, but it becomes much more brittle. So what happens is in testing, we can't heat treat these things. Well, we do slightly, but we don't heat treat them like we would for a customer unit. And the reason is we need to see where the problems are. And so when something is heat treated, it fails catastrophically. So you can't learn anything. And so with the ring and pinions, what happens is we purposely keep them soft. So the ring and pinion and the other gears that are in that ultimate beast right now are not heat treated like they would be for a customer, because we need to be able to pull it out and look at those gears and see what the wear pattern is. And if we have a major problem, we'll see it. If we heat treated everything and there was a major problem, it would grenade in there. And you would open that differential and you'd have, you know, basically metal confetti coming out. You can't learn anything from metal confetti.
Right.
So the short answer is we are actively testing them, and we're at the point where we can now start releasing these to our partners that are going to test them as well. People like Van Compass, who really know their stuff about off-roading and rock crawling. Folks like CA Tuned, who also know a lot about off-roading, and really placing these with folks that know both vans and off-roading really well to get their feedback on it so that when this releases to a customer, it's bulletproof.
When's the release date, or the estimated release date?
Oh, God, you're going to hold me to it. We're close. The cool thing is, because we are manufacturing these things ourselves, I love controlling our own destiny. A, made in America, love that. B, I love controlling my own destiny. I'm not waiting on a boat that's moored off of, you know, Long Beach Harbor for, you know, 90 days, etc. So we, a long time ago, beginning of last year, purchased all of the material for hundreds and hundreds of sets of lockers.
Oh, wow.
And this is one of those things where you talk about risk in a business. These are not small numbers anymore, and with the pricing of these materials, because we're talking about machining gears from solid steel bar that's 8-10 inches across. I mean, these things weigh thousands and thousands of pounds. And so we made the decision that we were confident enough in our team and our engineering to shell out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy this material that was going to sit in parking lot for a year. And so we did that because we were really afraid of the supply chain and COVID and what it would mean when we finally got this ready and it was time to hit the gas, and it didn't exist. And we were right. If we tried to get that material today, it's unobtainium.
Yeah.
And it's probably 50 to 100% more expensive now than it was back then. So the price of our locker would be much higher now if we didn't have that material.
Right.
So what that means is it allows us the luxury, because we're not shipping things from overseas to here, it allows us the luxury of waiting till the very last moment to run everything, because these are run by machines with computers. So we don't have any worry about that, right? It's going to be incredibly precise. But what it does, it allows us to test and test and test and test. And then when we finally sign off on it, it's run the machines 24 hours a day, get these things done, and we're done. As opposed to shipping stuff back and forth overseas. Okay, we're finally done. Okay, oh geez, we can't find the material. Okay, now we're going to have this stuff done in 10 weeks, but then it's going to sit on a boat for 90 to 120 days, and you miss half a year. So I think that one of our advantages, in addition to the things I mentioned, is that we control our own destiny. You know, if it's a problem, we own it. If it's an installation issue, we own it. If we want to have these ready in an expedited amount of time, we can do it. So that's what's making me excited.
Okay.
So anyway, to answer your question, release date, we are really close. We definitely want to get more units in testing, but we are still on target. We were saying Q1 of this year. We're still on target to have that. And our goal is, once we are final, and we're very close, and we go into full manufacturing, which at that point, you've jumped off the cliff. Like, once you machine a part out of this material, it's done. There's no reworks. It gets thrown away if it's not right. So once we're final and we start manufacturing it, the ship has sailed. So we're going to start booking appointments. And I mean that in the best possible way. We're not going to do it unless we are 100% confident it's good. But at that point, we can start booking people's appointments because the parts are going to be ready and they're done. You know, there's no changes that are going to happen at that point.
Right. So how much are we talking about?
I think we did $100 fully refundable deposit just so we could start getting people in a line so that they had some kind of rational order to getting them installed. And then I think we told people it's going to be right around $5,000. And I think we might be just under that, $4,900. Is
that parts and labor?
That's going to be parts only. Installation is going to be additional.
Oh, okay.
And we don't know exactly what the labor is going to be on this because, again, in testing, things are done differently, right? We're making small modifications. We're machining the inside of the housing slightly right now. We're hoping to eliminate that as a process, so that will bring the labor rate down. Right now, we're also having to machine our own shims so that everything is very, very precise. We're hoping to create some off-the-shelf shim stacks like people do for Jeeps that will allow us to install them more quickly. So, long story short, we want to both make a viable product as well as make something that is an affordable entry point for customers. But we understand that this is a niche product for a hardcore customer that really is going to get out there and do this. And because of that, it's going to be more expensive than a bumper for a Jeep where they make millions of them, you know.
Right.
And we have 7 figures in the development of this part. So, you know, that's real money. And so we're not going to make money on this part for a long time, but that's okay because we think it's transformative for the industry. And we think it's really cool to be able to do for customers.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's definitely going to I think it's going to let the Sprinter world start being a contender in the Jeep and Land Cruiser world. And the cool thing is, like, unlike, so when we were out on New Year's Eve, you know, we were freezing, but that's beside the point. Well, actually, it is the point because one of the guys had a really nice Land Cruiser and he had a pop-up tent. And even though, like, his Land Cruiser is probably way more capable than any of our Sprinters, he was still freezing his butt off. So at least with this...
You were warm. You were warm and unlocked. No locker, but you were warm.
Well, this is no joke. So the cook, the chef, and his family, he had his wife and his kids out there. It got to the point where, they didn't have a van at all. They had their Tacoma or whatever Tundra pickup that they had. But anyways, they were sleeping in a tent.
Like a rooftop tent or actually like ground tent?
Rooftop. But it got to the point where, like, they had to divvy up the family, and they slept in the vans for the second night because it was just too cold. But, I mean, the point is, if we can make the Sprinter as capable, or I don't know if it'll ever be as capable, but very close, it's, you know, I think you're on some type of, you know, mini revolution here to get the Sprinter game going.
Yeah, you know, it's like you have Venn diagrams, and we're trying to get to a point where there's way more crossover between those worlds than there is not crossover, right? So again, I've said it before, I'm a huge Land Cruiser guy, and so yeah, you're never going to make a van with independent front suspension and the size and weight and height as capable as a solid axle Land Cruiser that is, you know, made for the third world market, so it's absolutely bulletproof, overbuilt. It won't happen. But can we get to a point, and this is where my heart is, my birthday's in a few weeks. We're going to go down to Johnson Valley, and it's my perfect idea of fun. I'm going to be taking my van, towing a trailer with an FJ45 Land Cruiser on my trailer. And so I need a vehicle that's capable enough to get me out there and get to a place that's remote because I want to be with my friends and other van folks and other Land Cruiser folks and not be near tons of other people. And I need the capabilities of that van to get me in the places where I want to go wheel something that can actually rock crawl. And so I think there's a crossover there. And I think there's a lot of people that, you know, Paul Pritz, and somebody asked the forum the other day, they want to flat tow a Jeep behind their storyteller, you know. There's another guy here locally, Bart Draper, who runs NorCal Land Cruisers. He's got a Sprinter van. I'm not sure if it's a storyteller or not, but what you're seeing is folks that are very capable off-roaders choosing vans because they're just damn fun. And to your point, rooftop tents are a really nice step forward for the overlanding crowd. They are not a van. They do not have a thermostat. They do not have great rain protection. It is not the same league. So I'm with you. Making these vans more capable, going on trails. You're never going to rock crawl one of these, but can you start doing things can you do portions of the Rubicon? I don't know. Probably not in a full height van, but these are the things that we're going to aspire for.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I have a couple questions, not to keep talking about the locker, but I'm very mechanically inclined. But so with the stock wheels and tires that, you know, the classic Stealth and Beast come with, do you have to upgrade to a 35-inch tire, or can you use it all stock with that locker?
No, so that brings up a good point. You do not have to upgrade it. The locker is totally independent of all of these things. And in fact, we see a real market for this. we're so confident in the quality of our stuff. We're actually going to try to sell this back to Mercedes OEM as an option for them to install in vehicles for the Australian market. For if you've got an Amazon delivery vehicle that's 2-wheel drive and you have to go make deliveries in January in North Dakota, you need a rear locker, and you're not going to be on 35. So you're going to be on the standard street tires that Amazon runs. Maybe they upgrade you to some snow tires, hopefully.
If you're lucky.
There are so many scenarios where you have vehicles that will need this that won't have full off-roading tires,
right.
And the cool thing about a locker that engages and disengages is there's no impact to the vehicle when it's not being used. So you flip a switch to turn it on, and you flip a switch to turn it off, and when it's disengaged, your vehicle operates like it does today.
Yeah.
And in fact, better because you're re-geared.
Yeah.
And in fact, anything short of, if you are on stock, small, delivery driver wheels tires, then the re-gear is not going to be as ideal for you. It won't be bad in a sense. The 3500s come with a 435 rear right now. So it is a factory option for Mercedes. It is not a factory option for a single rear wheel 4-wheel drive. And again, touching back on the thing I said earlier that's super weird is the transfer case in a vehicle takes power from the engine and essentially transfers it to the rear axle and the front axle. Now, if you have two drive shafts spinning at different rates, that causes problems. And in fact, people that re-gear things with, and make them mismatch is a great way to blow up your transfer case. So there's some sort of, centrifugal clutch or something that's happening. It's not a mechanical difference in the transfer case in the Mercedes, because the front of a 4-wheel drive is a 435 gearing and the rear is a 392. And those don't match. So theoretically, you have to have some slippage somewhere in that transfer case. So the cool thing is, since Mercedes already had a 435 on the 3500 and the transfer case is the same and the front diff is the same, we knew that we could go to a 435 in the rear gearing and it would work with everything Mercedes has because it's a factory gear ratio.
Nice.
So that's one of the ways that we could kind of hedge against spending all this time and money and then having something that doesn't work.
Yeah, that would really suck if it didn't work out. So there was another question I wanted to ask. I'm having a brain
You were
dump.
asking about, can somebody with regular sized tires use this?
I can't remember. But I will say that after driving the Ultimate Beast, I did definitely notice a difference. Well, I told you while driving it, it felt like I was actually driving a Jeep instead of a van, which was really nice. So I'm excited to see where this goes and how it, I'm sure it's all going to pan out very well. But, I'm one of those people that I'm going to sit back, let some, go-getters like test it out, do their thing, and then I'm going to wait for the 2.0. But
well, we'll hammer it for you. The cool thing is lockers have been around for a while. So although I think we're doing something novel for this industry, we're not creating something from scratch that has a ton of kinks to work out, because locking differentials have been around for a long time. So this is something I'm pretty confident in. And to your point, the ride of the Ultimate Beast, so that vehicle has been in testing for a while and hasn't been up here at our facility. So it came up last week. I had a chance to go out and play with the locker, find some mud, and just driving that vehicle, comparing it to my Ultimate Revel build that I drive more frequently, it's on 33, so it's not on small tires. It's got a Rentec, it's got a pedal control. So we've thrown everything at that vehicle that we had in the toolbox previously. Driving that Ultimate Beast for like 20 minutes, I was like, it's night and day. It's just so much better. It's got the Van Compass 6.5 with the automatically adjusting dampeners, which I went on an absolute crap. It was a paved road, but it was crap out here near where our office is. And there was not an area of that road that wasn't a pothole or resealed. Essentially like driving on lane dividers. And that thing was so compliant and comfortable, and I think a lot of that has to do with the Van Compass suspension, the automotive or automatically adaptive suspension, but it also has a lot to do with the 35s. And here's where you wouldn't think the tire size has a lot to do with ride, but it does. There's a reason in the bicycling industry, again, tire size has changed, and a lot of people went to 29ers, which is a 29-inch wheel for mountain biking because it rides over the bumps better. The analogy I'll use is like which goes over rough pavement better, a roller skate wheel or a giant 33-inch tire. And so
Right.
the bigger the tire is, the less it's going to fall into the little ruts and divots it's going to pass over them. And so that van with that suspension on 35s with the re-gear was so much nicer to drive. It felt like I was driving an empty cargo van, not a completely built out van with full water tanks and all of that.
Yeah.
So I can confidently say that anyone that wants to come here and do an apples to apples comparison of a van on big tires without a re-gear versus that vehicle, they're going to see a difference.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be cool if you had it up in your Denver location once you get that track built so people can actually tell the difference. That'd be cool.
I want people to be able to experience what it's like with a locker. And what we can easily do is go get the van stuck and then hand it over to a customer and be like, get it unstuck. And if they can't get it unstuck, then we'll say like, hey, see that switch right there that, says locker, hit that. And then drive out like you're on pavement. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember my question. So someone who doesn't want the locker, but they just want their gears redone, can you just do that? Or do you have to get the locker too?
Yeah, the problem is that, again, it comes back to that fact that ring gear is welded in to the vehicle.
Oh, okay.
And so because we're replacing the locker, we have to put a new ring and pinion on anyway. Now you can buy with the ARB, what they're doing is they're buying, they're either, and I don't know how they're planning on doing it, they're either cutting your gear off, which would be incredibly time consuming, or they used to sell, I believe, the NCV3, which for most people is just the previous gen van. The new van is the VS30. The previous gen is the NCV3. I think all storytellers are VS30, so you guys don't really need to worry about this. They sold a bolt-on gear set for that vehicle. And so that will be available. But what you're doing is you're replacing parts that aren't right for a vehicle with a brand new full-price part that's not right for the vehicle. Because you're replacing the 392 with a 392 or 393 or whatever it is. So that's why. So the short answer is no, you can't. You can't have just the ring and pinion.
Okay.
But I think once someone decides to go to tires that are 33s, 34s, 35s, or whatever, and they find that they go off-road enough, by the time you go through the expense of changing out the ring and pinion, you might as well do the locker because it's such a game changer.
Yeah. Because I know in the Jeep world, once you hit 33s, everyone's like, did you re-gear? I'm like, sure. No, but no, I just taking the cues off, the actual, off-road homies. Yeah, I think, because I think I'm running 33s. I'm very interested. And that's why I was asking, is because maybe I don't want the locker. Because for me, if I have a locker and I know that the van is way more capable, I'm going to go test it, and then something's going to happen. Either I fall off a cliff, I break something. I mean, right now I'm still full-time.
Or awesomeness is going to happen. You're
Well,
going to get someplace you've never been, or better yet, you're going to be someplace where it's snowing or raining and everyone's stuck, and you're just like, I'm going to go get help because I can get out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there is, it does raise the bar. And this is something that I'm a little concerned about as a business owner, because Jeep people understand that as you raise the capability of a vehicle, you raise the opportunity for other things to go wrong. And I don't want to unsell the locker right now, but we sell things in an honest way. And like I said, people that overland a lot in Jeeps and so on, they bring spare axle shafts. They do these things because they are pushing these vehicles to a point where you might snap an axle shaft. Now, it's absolutely a adventure van owner's choice as to whether they want to put themselves in a situation where they need to carry a lot of spare parts. But what I do want to be really sure we over-index on is when you make a vehicle more capable, you are going to use your parts more quickly. It's going to be harder on your vehicle. An example I'll give is if you have, I don't know, like a sports car. Let's say you own a Porsche and you decide to go to a track day or something, and you run your Porsche around that track all day, come in, and you've completely fried your brake rotors, right? Because you are just packing so much heat into them and you're running them all day. Now, you go into that eyes wide open, that when you're running your car on a racetrack, you're going to use your tires more frequently. You're going to use your brakes more frequently, etc. But you can't then go back to Porsche and be like, oh, my rotors wore out in a single day because, so you should replace them. And well, the answer is your rotors didn't wear out in a day. You raced your car. And when you race a car, the rotors are out. They're getting used. And I'm not saying Porsche rotors are going to wear out in a day. And someone who uses a locker is not going to start snapping axle shafts. But it's important that we educate customers that, hey, you need to learn how to use this locker, and you need to understand that if you're going to go get yourself in situations that are more fun and go further, you're going to also want to learn about what spares you want to bring.
Right.
You know, whether it's brake fluid because you're going to catch brake hoses on things because you're getting off of regular fire roads onto actual trails where nothing to do with a locker, but there's branches and rocks and sticks, and they can hit your differential, and so you need differential fluid. They can tear brake lines open. You need a spare tire because you're probably going to be running low air pressure, and maybe you're going to have a tire pop off a bead. And these are all the aspects that people plan when they go overlanding, and it's going to be something that people in the van world are going to have to start planning for too.
Yeah.
But that's cool because it means you're going places that vans never went before.
Yeah. That should be your new slogan, taking vans where they've never been before.
I like it. It feels very Star Warsy.
I know, right?
or is that, I'm sorry, not Star Warsy, Star Trek, isn't it? Going...
Yeah, it's Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
To all the Trekkies out there.
I know, they're probably going to give us all kinds of hate on that one, but so we talked about the Ultimate Beast, and the big moving pieces obviously are the tires, the diff, but what else did you do to that bad boy? Because I got to tell you, when I was driving it, I didn't tell you because, you know, I was saving it for the podcast, but I want it.
That's the goal, right? And you know what's cool about being in this industry is I don't need a focus group of people who sit in a weird, you know, room and then we show things to them and ask them, is this going to move the needle for you? Is this cool or is this not cool? What we do is we build vans that we want. We build facilities that we want. We go on trail runs that we want. And we figure because we're just van geeks, nerds, van heads, whatever you want to call it, we love this stuff and we do this stuff. You know, like I said, my birthday is going to be taking my van out into the desert, you know? So we just build stuff for us, and we figure that people are probably, if we think it's really cool, then people are probably going to like it too. And thus far that's worked for us. And so with that Ultimate Beast, I'm pumped that you want it, and we're going to be releasing the video very soon. We kind of held off because it's taken us a little longer to get the other things on that vehicle ready to sell. And the last thing we want to do is release a video, get customers all excited, and then it's 6 months before the parts come out.
Yeah.
So we've delayed the release of that video showing all the cool gear on that van until we were much closer to a delivery date and when we could put stuff online that people could order. But that beast, I mean, there's not much of it that hasn't been touched. We did the 6.3, on that beast, there's not much that hasn't been touched. We did the 6.5 Van Compass adaptive dampeners and full suspension. It's got the 2-inch lift on it. It's got 35-inch wheels and tires. It's got the new factory beast wheels from Vision that we had painted an Audi Nardo gray because I think the color looks fantastic. So those are like a factory wheel. It's normally black that we did a take on. We've got all the skid plates on it from Van Compass because if you're going to go off-road, you got to protect your underside. Obviously the owl gear, but everyone hopefully by now knows what that stuff is. The locking differential, which is huge. All the modules, I haven't talked about that yet. So we work really closely with Rentec. They have been in the Mercedes tuning game for a long, long time. And they work on these supercars, these Mercedes that are like, you know, GTS Black Series that are $400,000 or $500,000. And so when you blow those motors up, you don't have a company very long. So they're really good at what they do. And so we work exclusively with Rentec. Not only did they come out with our engine tune, but we're working on a la carte modules for people that, like, you can't run 35s right now. We have a module that will let you run 35s. You can't re-gear a Sprinter right now. We have a module that lets you re-gear the Sprinter so the computer, we go in and change the computer so that the computer knows what kind of ring and pinion gear it has in the differential so everything plays nice. We're working on a module to keep the entertainment center on a rear view camera. And there's a couple other ones that we're working on. So you're going to be able to have this opportunity to have these a la carte things. Lane assist, lane keeping or lane assistance that everyone hates.
Yeah.
It's the devil incarnate. We are going to be able to default that. I think once you turn it off, we can either keep it off. I think we're going to,
nice.
or at least we're going to take the brake assistance off. So anyone that's had that happen, the side wind assist or the lane assist, where you start to drift out of your lane, or God forbid, you try to take a freeway exit without signaling, because you don't usually signal when you take an exit on the freeway, and the van tries to steer you back. The way it's doing that is with the brake calipers. It's using the ABS system, so it feels like the steering wheel. It's not the steering wheel. It's actually independently applying the brake calipers. I think it's dangerous. I think it works. I have a Mercedes car. It works fine on a car that's a sedan that's low to the ground. That works fine. On a van that's so top heavy, I think it's dangerous. And so we can turn that off. And so you'll get the beeping. So it will beep at you when you go out of your lane, but it won't start applying brakes for you and trying to steer the van all over the road, which in icy conditions, could very easily cause you to spin out.
Yeah. I'm excited for that one.
So those modules, and then going on, we've got our new side steps, which I think has gotten the most fanfare in addition to the locker. People really, really like them. And what we wanted to do with the side steps was to make them bolt up to Storytellers and bolt up to Revels. And then we obviously have an adaptation kit that you can use them for a standard Sprinter as well. The idea being, and I think I can say this, I'm close enough friends with the Storyteller people. I think they build a gorgeous van. I think it's really, really nicely done. I think the side steps leave an opportunity to have something that's a little bit cleaner, that maybe functions a little bit better. But I get it, right? They have, the amount of money that they put into those vans, they're still a business. They can't put on more products than their, sale price can sustain. Otherwise, you're not in business very long. And so they can't put ultimate beast level stuff on every classic coming out of the warehouse. And so this is an opportunity for us to say, hey, you've got your mode, you love it. You've got your stealth, you love it. And now you can literally unbolt those trays on the side and replace them with our side steps that are higher up. They're going to give you a little better ground clearance. I think they look fantastic. And we're also going to be having little additions to it, because we make them so you can mount things to them, not on the side with the sliding door, but on the driver's side, you can mount roto packs and other things to the actual side step. On the passenger side, where you get in and out of the vehicle, we're working on like boot cleaners.
Nice.
In the snow, we're working on like a thing where you can bolt it onto the side step, and it's either brushes or it's going to be bent aluminum with little spikes on it, and you actually try to scrape mud and debris off your boots and shoes before you get in your van.
So can I make a innovative suggestion?
Yes, please.
Can you make one for a dog?
For their paws?
Yeah, just have like a tube with little bristles in there. We just stick, the little paws and legs in
like
there
that.
and come out, and he comes out
Interesting.
cleaner than when he came in.
Kind of like a reverse pipe cleaner. Those things you use in for the test tubes in science class?
Yeah.
But like a reverse.
Yeah, exactly. At least, and then make it where you can kind of fit it to your dog's, paw or leg or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, no, this is the kind of stuff, and again, it goes back to authentically using the vehicles. And so we go out and we use our vehicles, and I go skiing in my van. I go to the mud in my van, and I realize that with these vans, and they're tiny, it's such a battle to keep them clean. And so we do things like the Inhabit floor mats that we sell, because you can take them out and wash them off. But I like to stop the dirt and the little rocks and the things from getting into my van in the first place.
Yep.
So with our side steps, can we create something that, again, protects pets' feet from falling between the side step and the van and getting hurt? And then also add the functionality of having some bristles or some sort of additive that we can add on that allows you to clean your shoes and your boots before you get in the van. Adding more functionality, because you have such limited space in these vans.
I have another idea.
Yes.
So maybe have I think you can still, I'm not an engineer, I'm just thinking out loud, but use a compressor and have a puck right there next to the sliding door, and then some way to tuck a small hose, and that way you can also spray, air spray stuff down.
Yeah, it could be very cool to have a fitting there where you could either have water or air or something.
Sorry, I'm kind of going off the...
No, I love it. This is literally what I do when I go to bed, is I sit there and I go, okay, I pick apart, and I enjoy this. And I just sit there as I'm going to bed like a sidestep, and I go, what functionality can we add to this? Or how can we make this function better than it does now? And I turn it over in my mind, and sometimes I end up with a complete... what do they say? A horse designed by committee is a camel. Sometimes I end up with camels. And it's not a great part, and it ends up in the junk bin. And we have a massive dumpster full of harebrained ideas that I had that once I made them, they didn't work. but every once in a while you get something that does work,
Yeah.
and that's what ends up making it to the light of day. But that's literally how we design stuff here, is we use our vans and we go, hey, here's the problem. My pet's feet are muddy and they're tracking it into my bed and onto my groove lounge and so on.
Well, I don't know a whole lot of Storyteller owners that don't own some type of animal.
It's true.
And then with the tubular thing, I noticed, to help protect the dog's feet or the animal's feet, maybe you can have something where the hose is stored in there, because you don't need a 5-inch hose to whatever.
True.
And then that way you can just kind of retract, and I don't know. I just come up with crazy ideas sometimes.
I love it. You're hired.
Anyways, but to not to get too off track. So you have all that cool stuff. You have a sick wrap on there, which I really like. I saw that you kept the stripes, but you made them the owl colors. That's pretty cool.
we wanted to make an ultimate beast, but we wanted to be recognizable as a storyteller. So we wanted to give it our own, as they say on American Idol, like keep it, what do they say? Like make it your own. And so it's like that. It's like taking a hit, a classic, if you will, in this case, a beast, and making it our own, but also retaining the essence of what made it a beast in the first place.
Yeah.
So we went with a crazy wrap on there. It's pretty cool. If you haven't seen it, people really dig it. And then we retained the beast mode stripes, and we did them in blue instead of the kind of sunrise colors that Stowe normally uses. So it's kind of got an owl flavor, but it's the Storyteller look. We actually kept the Storyteller logo in the wrap when we wrapped it. And I think it came out fantastic. Obviously, I'm biased, but I really like the finished product.
Yeah, no, I do too. It's pretty sick. Like I said, I want it, so.
And then, yeah, absolutely. And then we've got a new roof rack on there, and we've got a couple of options. And, the roof rack, I won't spend a lot of time on it, because for the most of the folks that listen to this podcast and have a Storyteller, you've got a roof rack.
Yeah.
And we're not in the business of selling people stuff to sell people stuff. So I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, come replace your perfectly good front runner roof rack with one of ours. So that's going to be a product that's mostly going to be aimed at folks that are building their own Sprinter, or folks like with a Revel, where yes, a Revel comes with a roof rack off the shelf, but it is more of a structure to house solar and these kind of things. It's not a proper roof rack where you can go up there.
Right.
So those are the target customers for that. But we're really happy with the roof rack. I think it came out really awesome. Again, I won't spend much time on it, but if you want to check out the pictures, we brought the tubes all the way down the A-pillars of the car, which is where the mirror is. And what that allows you to do is you can mount your lights onto that tube. You can also we have handles that you can mount. And so anyone that's ever tried to wash their windshield on one of these vans that's up high, and they're maybe a little bit height challenged, this will allow you to stand on the tire and grab that tube on the roof rack and lift yourself up. Because default, when you're trying to climb up to wash the windows, you grab the fender and it's really soft right there. And a lot of folks have bent that fender out when they grab it, and then you see if anyone looked and saw you do it, and you kind of bend it back into shape. So
no, I get it. So to switch gears a little bit, so as you know, Storyteller came out with the Invader for the 2022.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on that, and how does that compare to your Sherpa?
Oh, we're touching the third.
Stowe Nation is a production of Park Media. The executive producer is Younghwa Kim. The audio engineer is
Stephen Grasso.
The marketing director is
Guillaume Golson.
The original music and artist is done by
Jason Walsmith.
The sound designer is
Lorenzo Indriano.
And the webmaster is
Peng Shi.
Without any of these people, this podcast couldn't happen, so a big, huge thank you. And a big, huge thank you to you, the listener. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a 5-star review. This is Younghwa with Stowe Nation, and I can't wait to share the road with you.